Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. It's Ori here. In this video, I'll show you guys how I color eyes using this illustration of polarized Lapis that I drew as an example. This piece did really well on Twitter, and Lapis herself even made a post using the image, and I think how I painted the eyes played a big role in capturing her charm and making the piece successful. So I'll be sharing how I did it with you guys today. I'll also go through how to develop your own style, so make sure to watch until the end. Let's get started. How I color the eyes. Just a quick note, this tutorial PSD will be available for free, so you can go grab it after watching to take a look at the layers in more detail. Okay, so as the base, I've got here the line art, the base colors, and the eye white underneath along with its shadow. I'm actually the type of artist that doesn't use line art for the eyes, so right after I block in the base color of the eyes, I actually remove the line art, like this. And then I blur the edges. So as you can see here, the edges are blurred. And this blurring is using the blur tool in Clip Studio. It's simply applying it along the edges like this. This is of course optional, and many artists use line art for the eyes, so it depends on the look that you're going for. When it comes to coloring the eyes, I go through 3 steps. The first is to put in the core elements. These are the pupil, the dark rim shadow. If you have line art, this one might actually be optional. And then the highlight. As long as you have these, people will understand that it's an eye, so you can think of it as the bare minimum. And depending on your art style, this could very much be enough. For example, manga art style, which is very simplified, would have something more akin to this and maybe just a darker shadow on the top as well. The second step is to add in the shadows. First, I put in a lighter kind of interim shadow, which goes about just a little less than halfway. And in the middle, I also like to add in lines that follow the eyes, kind of like this. Then I add in a darker shadow from the top, and then I erase a bit of it to create kind of this receding shape that leads the focus towards the center. And by just having these core elements and the shadows in, it already starts to look like a decent eye, doesn't it? I think some of the older anime from several years ago would kind of have their eyes simply just like this. But more recent anime puts a lot more rendering and quality into their eyes. And of course for illustration, we usually need to add more detail than anime, since we only have one picture to grab the audience's attention and charm them with it. And in order to do that, I go to the next step, which is to paint in the extra lights and accents. So first I like to lighten the pupil up and give this gradation, so it's not just purely dark, but it also has steps of light to blend in with the bottom part of the eye, which is lighter. Then I add in some reflected light on top, which helps indicate that it's not just being hit by light from the highlight direction, but also from other directions too. Next, I add in a second highlight. I like to put a highlight at the top of my pupils, and then a smaller highlight opposite to the main highlight. Then, I add in this accent, which is kind of like this lighter color at the bottom. And then I add in some extra highlights on top of it as well, like this. Then I add in some stronger color accents. I like to add one right in the middle of the pupil. So this vibrant color accent helps to draw in attention towards the eyes. And it's not very visible from afar, but this kind of like this one dot, one tiny pixel of very intense color, which contrasts greatly with the pupil, I feel really helps to bring more attention towards the eyes. I also like to add these colors on the outside of the highlights. And these small touches help to bring a bit more life into the eyes and make it more vibrant, so it's not just one flat blue color all the way. Then I add in this accent that goes in between the base color and the interim shadows. And finally, another accent just at the top, which could probably also be classified as a reflected light. And finally, add in this glow using overlay. All of these lights and accents are really just extra stuff I put in, and it's completely optional. What you put in will heavily depend on your style and the look you're going for. Next are the eyelashes. I like to put the base color of the eyelashes as very dark, almost black, and then on top of that, I start adding in some lighter colors. This one is a medium light reddish brown. And I put in strokes in a way that it feels like that there's these eyelash lines in the center. Then I add in an even brighter color towards the tips. And this color is brighter because there's light being reflected from the skin. And it's also blending towards the skin color, so it feels like there's a bit of transparency in the eyelashes. Then I add in a small highlight at the bottom eyelashes. And finally, just this accent color at the top as well. It's very subtle and very thin. With the coloring done, I then add color to the line art. My line art base is black, so what I do is actually just add in some warm light colors starting from the tips, which as I mentioned before, it's blended in with the skin so it feels like there's transparency. So just a lighter color like so. And as an extra touch, I like to add this light orangish color as an eyeliner to help accentuate the eyes even more. Practical application. So here's how I applied what I just showed you in this Laplace illustration. So first I have these base colors of the eyes and the eyelashes. And as I mentioned before, I don't have line art. I just have the base colors and then I blurred the edges like this. Then I add in the shadows and the pupil. And then I adjusted the base color of the eyes since I felt it was too dark. At the same time, I also left some of the original darker and stronger orange in the middle to create that accent. And as you've noticed, I'm not really following it in the same order as I've showed you, because when I'm actually painting this stuff in, I kind of combine steps together and also adjust things as I go to make sure it fits the piece well. I don't recommend combining steps when you're first starting out, since it's easier to do it one step at a time, but once you've internalized how to do things, you'll naturally start to combine steps together because it's just faster to do so. And it starts to become intuition at that point. Okay, next, I add in some reflected light and also light up the pupil center and also darken the rims. Then I add in an accent color at the top, and the accent color of this piece is green because it's directly opposite to purple, which is Laplace's main color. So by having that opposite color, it creates this really nice, strong contrast. Then I adjust this bottom light accent and also add in the extra highlights on the sides. Then I add in the strong colored accents, so it's the one that goes on the side of the highlights and also in the center of the pupil. And I actually did a heart shape for this piece because the story is Laplace telling you to fall in love with her with this cheeky expression. And then lastly for the eyes, add in that glow color to warm up the center. For the eyelashes, it's as I mentioned before, add in some warm colors while leaving these kind of line shapes and also the even lighter color to show that transparency with the skin. Then goes the highlights at the bottom. And finally, that extra accent color. Leaving the line art black like this is not good since the lines stand out way too much and don't blend into the piece. So of course I warm it up to help it blend in and create that feeling of transparency. I almost forgot to mention, I also added in that orange eyeliner effect in the contours of the eyelashes, like here. It's subtle, but I feel it really makes a difference in making the eyes stand out more. How to develop your own style. So when it comes to developing your own style, what you want to do is play around and experiment with changing up the elements. You can of course change the colors to get different looks like I did here. So while keeping everything else the same and just changing the colors, I created this yellow variation, as well as this red variation, which would perhaps go for a monster or demon themed character. A way to experiment is to change up the shapes of the elements, such as experimenting with what would happen if you changed the shape of the highlights, like this to be more circular, making some of the highlights bigger or smaller, like so, or blurring some of the edges of the shapes to see how that affects it. The shapes of the shadows can also be blurred to help it blend in with each other more, and having things blurred and soft definitely creates a different effect than having things sharp. You can also add and subtract elements, such as removing highlights, or adding even more in like this, and really blowing up all the lights, including the reflected light. You can also get creative using some of the Clip Studio default brushes, such as these effect brushes and, for example, this glitter brush, and just sprinkling some of that on and removing it as necessary to add that extra sparkle in like so. So it can be really fun to experiment around and try things to find what you like. But an important thing to keep in mind is to control the contrast. And what I mean by that is that you need to make sure the level of detail and contrast in the eyes matches with the rest of the piece. So for example, imagine if you had less details in the eyes like this. It definitely looks very off since the rest of the piece has lots of details such as all these highlights and accents on the hair, and also all these fine shadows on the clothes and wrinkles. But then the eyes is very flat like this. It doesn't match the level of details with the rest. So first it looks out of place, but also the viewer will have a hard time focusing on the eyes since the other places like the hair, the clothes, and even the skin have a lot more details than these simple eyes. And with character art, it's really important to keep the face as a focal point, and having enough contrast in the eyes is key to that. On the other hand, you can also have the opposite problem where you have too much contrast. So for example, using a brightness and contrast layer here to bump up the contrast, you can see that having these intense conflicting colors with each other definitely creates that contrast, but then just doesn't match the rest of the piece because there's way too much going on in these eyes compared to what's happening elsewhere. So it stands out like a sore thumb, and the viewer is so distracted by this that it's hard for them to look at anything else in the picture. So remember to control your contrast by making sure that the level of detail matches everything else in the piece. and that you want just enough contrast to keep the viewer's interest in the eyes, but not so much that it sticks out awkwardly and they can't look at anything else. Finally, you should also study other artists whose eyes you like and analyze what they do. I discovered my current style through taking a look at what the artists I admired did, breaking it down, and then experimenting with different combinations and styles until I found one that I liked. Don't forget that what's most important is for the eyes to see your taste and the piece that you're drawing. So you can simply adopt what is useful and ignore the rest. And even with this tutorial, you can try it out, and then if you find you don't like something, leave it out, and if you find that you do, then simply keep it in as part of your repertoire. Because the secret to developing your own style is really to just understand yourself. To discover your style is to discover yourself. You'll have a style when you are able to clearly say, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. Therefore, I make these decisions in my art. It's simple, but not easy. And the process of understanding yourself can take a long time, so be patient and don't give up. It's definitely taken me a long time to find a style of eyes that I like. And even then, I'm pretty sure the way I draw eyes and everything else is going to keep evolving and changing. Because we're people, our tastes and interests will change over time, and that's simply natural. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video and got to this point, thanks so much for watching, and make sure to grab the free PSD of this tutorial. You'll be able to deepen your learning by taking a look at the layers in more detail. Also, I've prepared a version of the eyes with just the base colors and the line art, so you can try coloring it in step by step following this video. Because the best way to learn is, of course, to actually put pen to paper and try doing it for yourself. Also, you might like to check out this video where I share my whole process of going from a sketch to a finished colored piece. Hit subscribe if you want to see more tutorials like this, and make sure to turn on the notification bell since I upload videos rather irregularly. Also, if you want to see my art, you can follow me on Twitter, and I also sometimes post sneak peeks of what I'm currently drawing there. Links are down below. This was Oridays, and I'll see you in the next video.